My name is Martha. My son looked me dead in the eye and told me I wasn't family anymore. And in that moment, I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg or plead or try to argue him out of it. I just accepted it. This is the story of what happens when a parent calls their child's bluff and the painful, earth shattering aftermath of taking him at his word. For years, I'd been the family ATM, the emotional punching bag, the fixer of all problems. For my son, for his wife, for the entire life I had almost single handedly bankrolled. I was the safety net they never thought would break. But on that day, I didn't just break the net, I took it down, folded it up, and walked away for good. This is what happens when the bank finally closes its doors forever. To really get how we got to that point, you have to understand our history. I raised my son, Mark, mostly on my own. His mother left when he was young, and for a long time, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked two jobs to make sure he never felt like he was missing out. My whole mission was to give him a foundation for a life better than mine. I wasn't a helicopter parent, but I was always there, a constant presence, the ultimate safety net. I just thought that was my job as a dad. When he went to college, I paid for it. When he graduated and wanted his first car, I co signed the loan and covered the insurance for the first couple of years. And when he met Ashley, I was thrilled for him. I welcomed her into our little family with open arms. When they decided to get married, I paid for the wedding, a beautiful ceremony that cost more than my first house. I just wanted them to start their life together on the right foot without the kind of debt that weighed me down. The real shift began when they decided to buy a house. They found a place way outside their budget, but Ashley had her heart set on it. Mark came to me hat in hand with a whole presentation on why it was the perfect forever home. The conversation ended how it always did, with me not just helping with the down payment, but putting down the entire 20%. To protect my investment, my name went on the deed as a co owner, with a clear legal agreement that they'd work to pay me back and eventually get the mortgage in their own names. That was the plan anyway. Soon after, I helped Mark start his own graphic design business. I gave him the seed money thinking there were no strings attached. In reality, the strings were always there. They were just invisible. The business did okay, but their lifestyle always seemed to grow a little bit faster than their income. The requests for money got more frequent. First, it was a new car because Ashley's was unreliable. Then it was for a fancy vacation to de stress. I was becoming less of a father and more of a financial institution. But the money was one thing. The change in their attitude was what really started to grind me down, my opinions on anything from politics to parenting were dismissed as outdated. Ashley, especially, seemed to see me as a relic from another time, a walking wallet whose only job was to fund their modern life. My own son, who once looked to me for everything, now just seemed impatient and entitled. There were constant little digs, jokes about my old truck, my simple life, my refusal to invest in cryptocurrency. They were living a life I was paying for while mocking the very values of hard work that made it all possible. The breaking point came at a family gathering, my grandson Leo's fifth birthday party. I showed up with what I thought was a nice gift, a set of classic children's books I loved as a kid. The house was buzzing with their friends. Music was playing, but I felt a weird tension the second I walked in. It didn't take long for Mark and Ashley to corner me in the kitchen. Their smiles were tight. "Dad, we need to talk," Mark said, skipping hello entirely. Ashley jumped in. Mark has a huge opportunity, a once in a lifetime chance. Turns out a friend was launching a tech startup. It was, they said, a guaranteed success. They needed a massive amount of cash to get in on the ground floor. The number they threw at me was staggering, more than the down payment on the house. They had a slick brochure and a speech all ready to go. They weren't asking, they were expecting. I'd learned my lesson over the years. I told them I'd look into it. That night, I did my research. I looked up the company, the founder, the market. My gut and every single thing I found screamed it was a horrible idea. The founder had a history of failed businesses, and the plan was pure fantasy. It was a money pit. The next day, I called Mark and told him no. I calmly explained why. I told him I couldn't, in good conscience, throw away that kind of money. I even offered to help them find a real financial advisor to look at safer investments. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then the explosion. "I can't believe you," he yelled. "For the first time in my life, I have a chance to get ahead, to be a real success, and you won't support me. You'd rather just sit on your money." Ashley was on speaker, her voice dripping with venom. "We knew you wouldn't get it. You're just too scared. You don't want us to do better than you." The fight was left hanging in the air. The next weekend, they invited me over for a family dinner. I knew it was an ambush, but he was still my son, and Leo was my grandson. So I went. The dinner was incredibly tense. They made their pitch again, but this time in front of Ashley's parents, who just nodded along, shooting me judgmental looks. I held my ground. I said, firmly but politely, "My decision is final. I'm sorry." That's when Mark snapped. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His face was red, his eyes blazing. "You know what?" he said, his voice shaking with rage. "All my life, you've held this money over my head. This house, my business, it all comes with your approval attached. If you can't support our dreams, then you're not part of this family anymore. You're just some guy who signs checks." He took a breath, glanced at Ashley, who gave him a tiny, vicious nod, and delivered the final blow. "Don't bother coming around anymore. You're not family." The room went dead silent. Ashley's parents looked shocked, but also a little triumphant. They'd won. They'd painted me as the villain. Everyone was just staring at me, waiting. They expected me to crumble, to yell back, to start listing off everything I'd ever done for him. They expected me to beg for my place in the family I'd built. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, a strange, quiet calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a chilling sort of clarity. In his cruel words, he'd given me a gift I never knew I needed, an exit. He had finally drawn a line in the sand. I slowly folded my napkin and placed it on the table. I looked right at my son, whose anger was already starting to fade into confusion. He wanted a fight, and my silence was throwing him off. I met his eyes and nodded once. "Okay," I said. My voice was completely level. "I understand." Then I turned to Ashley. She looked like a deer in headlights. She'd planned the coup, but she had no idea what to do now that it had worked. I gave her the same quiet nod. "I heard you." Without another word, I pushed my chair back, stood up, and walked out of the dining room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't have some big parting shot. I just left. Walking through the living room, I saw the gift for Leo I'd left on a table by the door. I stopped, picked up the wrapped books, and took them with me. He said I wasn't family. Family gives birthday presents. I wasn't family anymore. I got in my truck, and as I drove away from the house I paid for, I didn't feel rage or even sadness. I just felt free. He had made his choice. Now I was going to make mine. The drive home was quiet. The calm I felt was active. It was the calm of someone who finally sees the whole chessboard and knows exactly what move comes next. My son said I wasn't family. Fine. I decided to take him at his word. Literally, family is messy and built on obligation. Strangers have contracts. The next morning, Monday, I didn't mope around. I went to work. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called my lawyer. I explained the situation with cold, hard facts. My son has ended our familial relationship. I need to sever all financial and legal ties immediately. First on the list, the house, their forever home. My lawyer pulled up the deed and the co ownership agreement we had all signed. It was ironclad. I was the majority owner. The agreement stated that if they defaulted, I had the right to force a sale. While they hadn't technically defaulted on a payment, I'd say him verbally kicking me out of the family was a pretty big change in circumstances. I told my lawyer to send them a formal notice. They had 90 days to either buy out my 80% stake at current market value or the house would be sold. Next, the business, his graphic design company. My seed money had secured me a 40% stake as a silent partner. Our agreement had a standard dissolution clause. I told my lawyer to trigger it. A formal letter went out that day telling Mark I was cashing out my shares. This would force an independent valuation of the company, and he'd have to pay me 40% of its total worth. I knew it would cripple the business, if not bankrupt it entirely, but I wasn't done. It was a cleanup, methodical, and precise. I logged into my cell phone account and removed their lines from my family plan. I called my insurance broker and had the car I'd bought for them taken off my policy. I went through my credit card statements and changed the passwords on every streaming service, every online subscription, every Amazon account they all used. The digital umbilical cord was cut. The final step was the most direct. After the calls were made and the letters were sent, I sent a short, simple text to my son. No anger, no sadness. It was as formal as a business memo. Mark, it read, per your request, I am respecting your decision. This includes terminating all shared financial entanglements. My lawyer will be in contact about the sale of the house and the dissolution of our business partnership. The phone and insurance plans have been discontinued. I wish you the best. I hit send. Then I blocked his number. I blocked Ashley's number. I blocked her parents. I went on social media and scrubbed them from my life. He wanted me gone. I was making sure there were no traces left. For the first 24 hours, there was nothing, a blissful, silent void. I guess they thought I was bluffing, just throwing a tantrum. They were probably waiting for me to come crawling back with an apology and my checkbook. Then the letters from my lawyer started arriving. The first panicked phone call wasn't from Mark. It was from my sister. She was yelling, frantic. What are you doing? Ashley just called me in tears. You're kicking them out of their house? You're destroying Mark's business over an argument? I let her finish. When she was done, I replied calmly. He told me I wasn't family anymore. I'm just respecting his wishes. These aren't the actions of a father. These are the actions of a business partner. When I explained it logically, she didn't know what to say. Then the emails started pouring in. First from Mark, then from Ashley. They were all over the place. At first, pure rage. How could you do this to us? This is cruel. Then, as reality sank in, the tone changed to desperation. Dad, please, we can talk about this. You're ruining our lives. Think about Leo. The mention of my grandson was a low blow, but I saw it coming. My love for Leo was the only thing that gave me pause, but I knew that him seeing his grandfather treated like a doormat wasn't good for him either. I held firm. I never responded. I set up a filter that sent all their emails straight to a folder, unread. The 90-day clock on the house was ticking. They couldn't get a loan to buy me out. Without me, their credit was junk. The business valuation came back, and the amount he owed me was substantial. His only option was to sell off company assets to pay me. Their entire world was crumbling brick by brick. They were finally learning the true cost of the lifestyle I had been quietly paying for all along. Some of my family called me a monster. Others, who'd seen this coming for years, called and said, "It's about time." It's been a year now. The house was sold 6 months ago. After I got my 80%, there wasn't much left for them. The business is gone. Mark had to sell it for parts to pay me my share and cover his debts. The fallout was total. My life, on the other hand, is quiet. It's a kind of peace I haven't known in decades. Maybe it's a selfish piece, but it's mine. The constant anxiety of waiting for the next financial emergency is just gone. I've reconnected with old friends. I sold my old house, downsized to a condo on the coast, and I travel. For the first time, my money is my own. The relief is huge, though it's still tinged with the sadness of a phantom limb, the ache for a relationship that isn't there anymore. And now for the update I'm sure you're wondering about. About 2 months ago, I got a letter forwarded from my old address. The handwriting was my son's. My heart pounded as I opened it. For a second, a foolish little flicker of hope ignited in me. I thought, maybe this is it, the apology, the first step. It wasn't. The letter was 12 pages long. It wasn't an apology, it was a list of accusations. He detailed every single thing he thought I'd ever done wrong. He accused me of ruining his life over one little argument. He claimed I had been a controlling father who used money to manipulate him. He never once mentioned what he said or the years of financial dependency. He was the victim. I was the cruel old man. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was just sorry for the consequences. Reading that letter, the last bit of my guilt just evaporated. I finally understood that this wasn't about a fight over money. It was about a gap in our values that you could never bridge. He didn't see me as a person he'd hurt. He saw me as a service provider who'd been shut down. You can't start to heal until the person who caused the wound admits they're holding the knife. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and filed it away. I haven't written back. Maybe one day he'll get it. Maybe one day he'll feel actual remorse and want to do the hard work of rebuilding trust. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm not waiting by the phone anymore. I'm living my life. I have grieved the son I lost, and I am finally truly at peace with the silence he demanded. This story isn't easy to tell, but it shows that sometimes the hardest decision is the only one that can set you free. For anyone out there feeling used, unappreciated, or disrespected by the people who are supposed to love you most, remember that your peace has value. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories about life's tough choices, please subscribe